Okay. Okay. We are recording. Hi, everybody. This is David P. France, and I'm coming to you from Basel, Switzerland. Before we get started, I want everyone or remind everyone to like the videos, subscribe to the YouTube channel and BitChute channel, and also share the videos with your family, friends, and colleagues. We are now up to interview 47, I believe. And today I'm talking to some colleagues, some frat brothers actually, from the University of Pennsylvania from way back. Together they're going to talk to us about how they developed their business. The business is called Raise Your Spirits, and it's under the raiseyourspirits.net is the website address. And with us, we have Max Miller, we have Kevin Raiford, and we have Scott King. Welcome, everybody. This is our first 4 split screen that we've done. How are you guys doing? Tell us where you are located. You know, as we said, Max, you can start off. Tell us where you are in the world, and so people can get an idea of how this is coming together.
Sure thing. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
And Kevin, where are you located?
Hello, I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Las Vegas. And Scott, where are you located?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Right. So already, right, I mean, this is the beauty of a Zoom call. We're in, and I'm in Basel, Switzerland. I mean, we're in 4 different places, completely different places. And yet we're here together to talk about this, to talk about your story. So tell us how this idea came together. It happened at the University of Pennsylvania, as I recall. Who wants to start?
Well, we certainly met, of course, but
Yeah,
I guess
of course,
in a sense, it started because we certainly shared a lot of spirits together at Penn. So we had a fondness for that for sure. And, it really was many years later, because these guys, I went to law school after Penn, and Kevin and Scott were working. So they were really the ones that actually introduced me to, going to bars and getting cocktails and that sort of thing. I was still slumming it, in grad school, and they were working. But it wasn't until my company sent me back to business school, right, and came up with this concept of Raise Your Spirits. And I remember, I think I showed you guys a napkin drawing or something. It was some piece of paper that I had from class where I was just scribbling and trying to figure out what this was. And by this, I mean, we were kind of looking at channel power and channel management, all those things that you look at in business school. And because I was really passionate about the bourbons that these guys had introduced me to, I started looking at the industry and came back with this concept of Raise Your Spirits, of engaging people around craft spirits and spirits in general. And I think I came back and either took a picture and sent it to you guys. I don't remember how it saw the logo, or you guys came up to Pittsburgh, I think, actually at one point, and we were sitting on the patio and showed them this concept and talked about the concept, and rest is history, really.
Well, in terms of before it even became a more formalized business, I mean, you guys were hanging out, as I recall. I lived in Du Bois House, and Max, you lived in Du Bois House as well, but you lived in the part that was way, way, way in the back. Is that right? Like when you come in and then you go up the stairs and then you go usually where the chair of the Du Bois College House lives, right? All the way in the back. There was a huge room that they had that they gave to the housemaster or something like that. So you were in the back. And I remember that when you guys would hang out, it would be a whole bunch of people going back there, and of course, I didn't necessarily know, but I remember you holding, spirits or something that people were going back there. And I knew that. I was like, well, I wonder what's happening back then, right? So then when you told me about this business, I was like, I put 2 and 2 together. I said, they probably started because he was hosting all these parties. And from the parties, you were introducing these spirits, or you were almost testing I mean, is this correct? Give me a little bit more of from your point of view.
Yeah.
I think that we didn't have the budget to introduce people to fine spirits at that time, but I think collectively we always had an affinity to host people, and oddly enough, it was always under the guise of a cocktail party or something that was a little more. I don't know why we were seeking to be more upscale, but at that time, especially as freshmen, we found that was going to be our way to make our mark at Penn. But something that started as more of a novelty, I think. But obviously there was something there, I think innately, that caused us to say, okay, despite the fact that we may be doing this right now to entertain ourselves as well as some other folks, it kind of evolved. It evolved to the point where it's saying, okay, something that's entertaining, something that, and then fast forward a few years to something that we're sharing amongst ourselves, good spirits, just between the three of us, maybe if somebody else asks for our opinion, and then fast forward a few more years to Max coming up with an idea saying, hey, wait a minute, this thing has been evolving, and why not come up with a way to monetize this and make it a business? So it was while he finally, I think Max is the one that finally said, okay, I always call this a paid hobby, but it was really that time to say, okay, we've been doing this for so many years, really not structured, really just having a good time, sharing experiences with others, and then how can we do this, in a more structured way, and also perhaps make $1 or $2 while we're at it.
Well, I'm always fascinated. Well, I'm fascinated because you were able to organize, right? And so this is a key, for me, it's a key element, because so many people that try to do these things can't get to the organization part. So how did you organize from something that was a hobby business or business hobby to something where you actually, and perhaps to make it clear for people, we should tell them exactly what the service is, right? So that they know, right? Like right now we're sort of talking around it, but the service, if someone could explain to the audience what exactly is your service, and give us some nuance about maybe what you do versus other people.
Sure. I mean, Raise Your Spirits is, at one point we were calling it a sensory experience firm. And frankly, what we evolved into is a sales support tool, really is what we are, but it happens to integrate spirits into corporate sales platforms. All right. So for example, if you're in the sales team, and let's just say you're at an enterprise sales kind of firm, software or something that has really long sales cycles, usually in the sales world, you have to have multiple touch points, right, to get your client to close, right? And usually those touch points are ball games, steak dinners, golf outings, right? There's this whole category of experiences that sales teams are using in order to engage their customers. And so that's where we fit in. We're an alternative to all those. And we like to say that we're both social and intellectual engagement. So imagine this construct of doing what we're doing now, because we've gone virtual, right, in the last 8 months, but we were in the live version is the same thing, which is engage people around spirits, right? So host a formal tasting. Our client brings their prospects, right? And now they have a way and a means to actually engage with them that's different from all the other activities that they may be using in order to get to close, right? And so they've been, over the years, engaging us as a part of their sales platforms, right? Around conventions, around prospecting, right? And using really our service as a draw. Because if you're a client, let's say you're a prospect, somebody calls on you and says, oh, I have tickets to a game. Well, now it's almost ubiquitous. I mean, all of us love going to sporting events, but most of us have access to those now, right? Oh, you want to go golfing? Most of us have access to them. Most of their clients have access to them. Oh, you want to taste, these fine bourbons and tequilas? Oh, no, I haven't done that before. Oh, you want to take a virtual tour of Scotland? Oh, I haven't done that before. Oh, you want to travel to Mexico virtually? Haven't done that. I mean, it's night and day in terms of the offering that we have versus the other choices that sales teams have to engage their customers. And really that's where we found, you know, our niche.
Mhm. It's interesting because, you know, just from hearing what you're saying, I know that I'm interested in spirits. I don't even know what spirits, I mean, I generally know what they are, but I mean, for people that aren't familiar with the categories of spirits, right? Could you give us a short list of go-to spirits, right? So let's say if I want tomorrow to go out and say, all right, I've listened to you guys, I've never, you know, tasted this, and this. What are the go-to spirits that you could recommend to someone who's sort of like myself?
Scott, you want to take that?
Well, I think one of the first things that we do is really try to understand what your palate is. So one of the things when we do a tasting, most oftentimes we're doing spirits without any mixers, and we're drinking it neat, meaning it's just poured out of the bottle into the glass. Small amounts, but the purpose behind it is for you to taste it. So when you think about this is really a non-traditional, I'm here for a cocktail party, I'm having a few drinks, maybe this tastes good, I don't really know what I had, maybe this cocktail is more social lubricant than anything, but we're focused on, if you taste this, you need to understand what you're tasting. And so when we start talking about the ingredients and things of that nature, so before I even would say, well, here's a go-to, because that's literally, you know, for all of us on the call, it would probably be different answers for each of us, because it literally is dependent upon your palate. And that's one of the things that we try to really focus on, never to say, okay, hands down, just pick this one. Pick this one, and this is guaranteed this will work for you. It's more, what do you like? What do you generally, and not just spirits, what do you like to eat? What do you like? Do you like salty? Do you like something that's spicy? You know, just understanding all of that. And then taking it to the next step of, well, what do you normally drink? Whether it's wine or anything, just to understand that. And then the next step is to say, okay, well, if you like these, you know, couple of things, then this is what we're going to recommend. So it's really difficult to start with that question. That's because that's probably one of the top 5 questions always. They're like, guys, give me your top 5, you know, like typical top 5, and pick a category. But it's like, if you ask me, it's my opinion based on my palate, where someone else would taste it and say, I don't know what Scott's talking about. This is horrible, or I didn't like it. So it really does depend on each individual person.
Right.
So I didn't answer your question.
No, you did. But I mean, so brandy would fall under spirits, right?
Absolutely.
Correct.
Tequila
Yes.
would fall under spirits.
Yeah, anything that's distilled.
Okay, here we go. Anything that's distilled would fall under spirits.
Correct.
And
a lot of people sometimes when they say wine and spirits, that's why, because wines are fermented.
Right.
Whereas all your spirits are distilled. So anything distilled, you know, is in our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things, and the it depends answer, but that Scott gave is right. I mean, in this category, because and this is one of the things that we do in every experience, is help people understand the flavor spectrum. So when Scott's saying everybody's palate is different, the way that you hone in on what your palate really is at least how we do it, is we share spirits that are all across the flavor spectrum. Right. So bourbon is really hot right now. Tequila also really hot. So when we're doing a bourbon experience, we're going to expose people to bourbons that are all along the flavor spectrum, right? And usually show them some extremes, and then the people realize, oh, I like how this tastes. Oh, this one is corn forward. Oh, and I really like that. So that means my palate is leaning more towards a sweeter type of bourbon, right? Whereas if you have a spicier bourbon, that's usually being driven by rye, which is another grain in there. And some people love the spiciness, and therefore their palate is leaning that way. But you don't, until you taste them all together in sequence, So a lot of people, that's where you see the light bulb go off, like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I liked this or why I liked it until you showed me the bookends, right? And then once they understand what the bookends are, then they realize, oh, okay, I see where I fit. And then that's when you can answer the question, what should I go out and buy? Well, now you know, because you've tasted, and figured out where you are on the spectrum, and that kind of guides your thinking when you go out and buy something.
So how did the first client come about? I remember in our pre-interview, we talked about this. I mean, you talk about this being organic, this was a hobby, but then there was a time where the first client, and this is, for me, this is always interesting. How did you get the first client? How did that materialize?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And there's still clients today, actually, after what? They're on their 14th or 15th. Yeah, I can't remember how many they've done, but yeah, so we donated a tasting package to a function at my law school here in Pittsburgh. And because at the time I was on the alumni board, and they were looking, how they always looking for donations, right? So like, well, look, let's
I know.
Yeah, yeah. So I know you're going to hit us up later, aren't you? Donated a tasting, and it ended up being number one. What do you call it? Customer validation, as well as a pricing survey. It ended up being those two things, because the people, at least we understood, people would bid on this service, and at the time the service was literally a dinner, right? It was a local chef creating pairings with several bourbons. And we did start with bourbon. Now that I think back on it, I mean, bourbon was always top of mind for us. So it is kind of ironic that because at the time the category wasn't exploding like it is now, right? We're talking about 2007, something like that.
Yeah.
So the craft spirits industry hadn't even exploded. Now it's on fire. So, but then it was unique, and people we were calling it a bourbon experience, right? And at the time, the whole notion of experiential anything wasn't even a part of the marketing narrative. Now it's everywhere. Everything is experiential, but then it wasn't. So it was kind of cutting edge, at the time, and people were like, wow, this is interesting. So they purchased the item. We hosted the dinner. It was all three of us actually were there, and the chef. And so Kevin Scott came out. You guys were both still in Philly, right, at the time? Is that right? Or no? I can't remember actually. You might have moved.
I think I was in Atlanta already.
You were in Atlanta by then. Okay.
Yeah, and I was in California, I think.
You were in California, right? So they flew in from their respective places, had a relationship with one of the top chefs here in Pittsburgh. And he had a place right in downtown Pittsburgh. I remember it had a window view, people could see from the street. It was all perfect in terms of the setup. And we basically walked through every spirit. And the long story short is that they, it ended up that all these people were in the oil and gas industry.
Right. Well, yeah.
And which we didn't know. I mean, we discovered that, but it turns out that the whole industry descends here on Pittsburgh every March. And so every March since then, I was talking about since 2007, they've hired us to do their dinners for their events here in Pittsburgh. So that was our first client, and now they're our longest running clients over the last, 12, 13 years.
Yeah, I think it's find it interesting, very interesting, because I think a lot of times when people go into business, getting that first customer is the key, right? It's the key. It takes it from being a hobby or something that's losing a lot of money to something that puts you in the black. So, I always like to hear about how people get started. I mean, I'm very curious about it. With regard to the operation of it, we'll talk about how you started to put the operation together, and then touch a little bit on what's happening now during this COVID era, because I'm sure you've had to change up a bit in order to comply with what's happening in terms of regulations and rules for COVID, and then also in terms of how people are working from home. So the first, how did you start to move this so that it was more operational, where you had money coming in or your sales to get more clients? Was there an active intention in doing this? Or did people just, or clients, did they just start coming to you after the first client? Can you describe how it unfolded?
Yeah, a lot of referrals, essentially.
No.
I mean, it's been a referral driven business. It's a B2B model, right? Even though we started that story about our first client, I mean, I think, and certainly in my mind, and I think a lot of our minds, we thought this was going to be a more of a consumer focused type of platform. But really it's evolved into pretty much only a B2B platform, right? Where all the businesses are our clients, and certainly they're bringing their clients in. So it's definitely B2B in that sense. And so in terms of how we're getting new clients, I mean, a lot of it's been internal referrals. I mean, what really transitioned us to kind of think the real thing was when we got a pretty large software firm as a client. And they and it was IBM, at the time. It was one of my business school classmates was one of the sales leads at IBM. And this is kind of where, the story that Scott was telling earlier, we've always been doing casually drinking with friends. And so in business school, everybody knew me as, that dude bringing bottles, to the study group. And so, it turned out that they were the guys that ended up really getting us into IBM. And it was interesting because that was all internal referrals, right? Once we got the first IBM client, I think that was the analytics group. Then we started getting, the finance software group and the HR software group and everybody, all these other groups that had, large marketing budgets, or sales budgets. And they were basically now allocating those line items to us and saying, look, we have 7 cities to do, you guys handle it. Right. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the sales side of it. I mean, Kev can talk more about the ops back end, because that's really his bailiwick.
Well, how did the ops develop? I mean, Kevin, how did tell the audience what exactly you do with regard to the group of you?
I guess certainly, and it's funny, as it started to morph and grow, especially, I don't want to pivot too much to the COVID situation, but started to morph and grow, our clients realized that we needed to have a back interface. So it's really fantastic that Max and Scott have really been just such phenomenal learners and educators on themselves and others about the spirit categories, and it allowed me to focus on our back end. So basically, the key thing is for business, you still got to get your revenue, right? So I'm the one that is the accounts receivable. So I send out the invoices and I say, hey, it's been a couple hours, you got to pay us our money, right? So the key to that, our clients are billed efficiently, invoiced appropriately, as well as making sure that our vendors get paid as well too. So I'm accounts payable and accounts receivable. So that's the fun part about the fact of, for me, every morning I get to wake up and say, oh wow, this is being deposited into our accounts. And so for the business aspect of it, you have the customer facing side, but one of the things too that distinguishes us as a company now is the fact that we are very personable. And so what we can do is that there's intimacy and there's education on the sensory experience side that Max and Scott were mentioning before about the tasting and the palate, but also too, when they call me about their billing or call me about the logistics or when their shipments are going to get there, it's good to know that there's a voice that you can put with a face as well. And so, we pretty much want to be very harmonious, so that the same level of attention that you might get while you're tasting one of your favorite spirits, the same level you get knowing that when you pay someone, we're going to show up, we're going to be reliable, your invoices are going to be correct. If you need to make a change, or if we need to issue a credit, or if you just have received exceptional service and we say, Kevin, we want to lock you guys in for a long time, then fortunately they know that all 3 of us can really be in sales, as well as all 3 of us can make sure that things happen operationally. So I think that's the critical thing now. And as we grow, we are seeing a lot of our customers say, hey, what we appreciate is the total touch points, or all the touch points that we have with your business. So from Max to Scott, to me, we just enjoy interacting with our clients. And I guess that all goes back to being at Penn, having such great mentors that told us that when we run a business, your word is your bond. So it's all back to, our mentors like Harold Haskins and Kenneth Shropshire at Penn, been phenomenal people that set us a great example. So I'm just happy to be a part of it.
So before we continue, because I have more questions on that in this vein, what is your background? Who was in Wharton and who was in the college and who was in engineering? I mean, can you break down what your experience was at Penn briefly? Because I didn't have any interaction with Ken Shropshire. He was the sports marketing professor at Wharton, right?
Mm-hmm.
We actually taught legal studies too.
He was legal studies 101. We were there. Yeah.
That was our first class with him. Yeah.
Okay. So all three of you have Wharton backgrounds, or what's?
So Kevin and I are Wharton, and Max is the college.
Oh, the college. Yeah. I was English major.
But did you take Shropshire's course?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing about Penn, and we'll break. I just want to detour shortly with this, is that for people that don't know, back in the day, you had to apply directly to the school at the University of Pennsylvania. So if you wanted to be in Wharton, you had to apply as a freshman. So once you got in, a lot of people wanted to take Wharton classes, right? So it's very difficult if you were in the college, let's say, and then you wanted to take a Wharton class. You had to finagle because in the beginning of the class, this is my experience, they would know how many people were in the college or how many people in Wharton. They knew before you even walked in which seats belonged to Wharton. So they sometimes would ask you, like, all right, so if you're not in Wharton, raise your hand, you gotta go, right? So it's great that you were able to take the course. If the fact that you're in the college, I had never taken a Wharton class in my life, and I think it's great also that you retain some knowledge. With that, when you say that your word is your bond, you got it from Haskins, you got it from Shropshire. What is, when you say the touch points, how are you interacting with your customers? Are you just emailing, or are you calling them up on the phone? I'm just curious as to how you've developed your customer service.
It's two. I mean, I can talk about the external facing, and Kev can talk, on the internal. But I mean, certainly, we're both external facing. Just Kev, like I say, managing a lot of the receivables and payables, but they're both customer service, right? So on the front end, sort of customer acquisition side of things, have a lot of those conversations with clients, just understanding what their needs are. Mm-hmm. Like this whole notion of us being a sales tool, that's new language even for us. Like that's an insight that came over the years, right? We thought that we were this luxury sales platform in the beginning, and now the market has dictated something else, which is, it's taught us something else, which is, number one, people just aren't using the word luxury like they used to, and everything has transitioned to being experiential, and people want to be educated, and they want to understand the artisanship of things that they're consuming. Mm-hmm. Right, and this just happens to be one of those consumption elements, and so that's one of the big. And so, how does that relate to sales? It relates in this regard, which is we're starting to speak the language of the customer, in the sense that they have very large sales pressures, right? They have to hit their quarter numbers, just like every other company, and they're looking at their sales pipeline, and they're looking at, how can we engage our pipeline better? How can we grow the pipeline? And then how can we close more sales out of this pipeline? Let's get RYS engaged. That's how, mm-hmm. Right? And that's the learning that we get from talking to the customers. And when they hear us say that, they're like, okay, these guys are in it with us. Like because we've asked them, and we have a lot of clients now that are mutual fund complexes, right? And wholesalers. And they've asked them, so did you get more assets this quarter? How many? What are they? And they're like, yes, we did. And these clients are calling us back. That's how we sell. I mean, that once they hear us asking them that question, they're like, no, nobody, and again, I'm not putting down the restaurant industry or the arena industry or anything, because they're important businesses, but I'm guaranteed they're not having that conversation with the clients, about how can this luxury box really shape your sales for the year. Mm-hmm.
So Max, I think you're underselling the fact that, well, I think it's our corporate experience as well. so that we
Yeah.
can do solution-based selling, so that we can have those conversations, because other industries might want to do it, but if you haven't had that experience to say, hey, we all have a corporate background, so we understand the pressures that are involved with whether it be periodic goals, quarterly, annual, etc. So that when we start talking their language, and I refer back to solution-based selling, because that's something that Max is great at. I don't know if he's aware that he's doing it, but it's a conversation, just saying, okay, let's talk about what you're trying to accomplish and how we can help you accomplish that, as opposed to, I'm going to pitch my product.
Right.
And Kev on the other side is saying, once you have engaged with us, I want to make sure that, you can focus on what you need to focus on. You don't need to be concerned about any of the logistics or operations. That, I think, that is the one thing that separates us, even if there are other firms that are starting to do this, because, tastings and that's starting to pick up now. But I think our point of differentiation is still the touch points in our acumen, and making sure that we are focused on the customer. Say, okay, what do you need in particular? We have some cookie cutter things in order for us to, be productive, obviously for scale, but at the same time, every customer is treated as an individual. So if they have the unique need, we try to meet it. And that's what everyone wants. Every customer, all of us, it's not every customer, that's what we want. Big company or not, when you go in, you want to feel like you are the most important person in the room. And I think that's right where we focus. That's our sweet spot.
Yeah. And I think, just as a point, my experience with companies in Switzerland is that they don't understand this, and this is what distinguishes American companies, or the American experience in corporations, working in corporations, from other countries. Some people get it, but there's a big gap. So, like, let's say if I call somebody from another department and I need something, and I work for an important department that is constantly churning out things for the entire company, they should already know when I give them a call that there should be a full customer service type experience where they're meeting my need. But not everybody understands that. And I think it's something that is unique to the United States, not with every company, right? But in terms of, if you attend the University of Pennsylvania, let's say, and you are a Wharton graduate, you are gonna know customer service. You're supposed to know customer. I think you're supposed to know customer service before you even get there. That's how strongly I feel about it, especially in this day and age, where it's a key element to locking in sales and growing. So tell us more about, where are you now in the life cycle of your company? I mean, it's still a young company, right? It's still, I don't want to take words out of your mouth, but if you can describe or tell us where you are in the cycle.
Yeah, we've, I think, gone through our third reinvention here. I mean, in terms of, reacting and having to pivot to, COVID. We were doing all these tastings live, around the country. And so us being in different geographies actually helped, that there's events on the West Coast. Kev could manage those, certainly in the Southeast, Scott could handle those. And, I pretty much did all the Northeast, New York type, Philly, those types of things. But when COVID hit, we decided to sort of rebrand this offering as a virtual sensory sales support services, VS4. And that's, kind of rebranded the site. And it was just a reaction to what was happening in the marketplace, which is the sales teams. And it was a guess really on our part, in I don't know, maybe it was February, March, when we talked about this, guys, and like, well, here, let's try this out. And, within a week, it was, we got our first client, I think was first virtual client was Bank of Canada. I think that was the last week of April. And literally since then, I mean, Kev, what another percent would you say? What percentage growth would you say in the last 8 months? Yeah.
We've been growing, about 8,000%. I mean, we're fortunate that we're able to address this market, and I think that speaks volumes to how well, like Scott and Max particularly, are able to convey their message virtually just as intimately as we did when we were live. And so every month we're seeing, month over month growth, and it's fantastic that we're able to address the needs of our clients. And we're being booked more and more going forward, even into 2021. We're seeing bookings, and our clients are they're competing with us, even though when I say competing with us, I mean like they're competing to get spots on our calendar, and we're just trying to make sure that we can address that and try to make sure that we give them the same kind of attention that we've always have been providing. And so I think that's probably our main challenge, is trying to grow and expand our bandwidth. But so far, but we still realize that we're still in our infancy. There's still a lot for us to learn. We still do, like one-offs and get a lot of feedback from our clients, and they're like, how can we be better? What can we do to address your goals? I mean, if our clients are trying to grow their portfolio and their assets, like Max said earlier, how can we help you grow? And so I guess that's always going to be a challenge. But in terms of your question, financially, we're doing better than we ever have. And so we want to make sure that, we acknowledge the pain that we're all feeling like throughout the country, as, even outside of the US. So we want to not be, really glib about it. But yes, I mean, our business is really taking off, and we're doing, relatively well. And we, all hats off. It's really a blessing to be able to take care of our families.
Yeah. Well, I think it's remarkable. I mean, again, I want to say that when people go into business, it's rare that you can get beyond a certain point. I mean, there's a lot of failure involved in this. And I think the fact that you guys took an idea that really was, that came out of our experience at the university, right? Yours more specifically than mine. But of course, as someone that was living in Du Bois, I had my eye on everything. So even though I didn't know the detail, right? And you're going to laugh at this, even though I didn't know the detail, years later, I'm linking what happened in one moment to sort of what you're doing now. And that's the way that I've operated. Now that's more of a long-term sales or developmental strategy, right? So it's why I am good at fundraising, because I remember moments that happened 30 years ago and why they're important, right? So the fact that you guys have been able to come together and work together, right, and still remain friends, I think is remarkable, right? I think it's a rare thing. And with regard to what I'm presenting on this social media channel, I thought you guys were perfect, in terms of what I'm trying to accomplish. So, I want to thank you for making yourselves available and telling us your story. Is there anything else that you would like to, each individually would like to say with regard to, it could be anything, whether it's, the actual business that you're talking about or Penn or anything else?
Well,
Sorry.
the one thing I would say is that I know that you mentioned Morton a couple of times, but I do have to give, the skill sets certainly around communication, and writing. I was an English major, and I place a lot of value on that part of it, just because I think it's helped, sort of create this narrative, but also, communication is key with the clients, and just, some of the copy we have and the creative and that sort of thing. I mean, that what is that, the left brain part of things? I guess I'm on that side of it, and Scott is a combination of the two, and Kev is definitely on the right brain side of things. But I think that's a part of what makes this work. But I think that just in terms of the Penn experience, I mean, I think you're right. These guys got the fundamentals of business early, but I certainly got the fundamentals of writing and communication early, and the combination of those has played a part in this. Just in terms of people being able to articulate what we offer, but then also to be able to, I think Scott was saying earlier, the solution-based selling requires listening. And that's a skill set that we take for granted, even though, certainly in the English department, that's all it was writing and listening. That's all you do. But not any number crunching for sure. So
and Kevin, what about you? What is anything
No,
that you'd like to
I
add?
think it's all about the relationship. I was joking before. I was like, I'll go first, but Max knows, he don't need to say anything ridiculous. But the key thing is that it's important that you have the core will be the relationship aspect of it. And so, of course, thank you, Dave, for putting this together. But I mean, I give Penn a lot of credit for getting us all into this big convergent, melting pot. We've got great classmates where they were in, of course, our fraternity, not in our fraternity. I mean, people, all different races, backgrounds, what they bring together, different countries. I mean, Scott and I have roommates from India. I mean, so it's all about the fact that you put everybody together, and our business still centers around those relationships between the three of us. It expands into our clients, and people can tell that it really is an organic, holistic company. And I really got to, take my hat off to, David, Scott, and I. We talk all the time, and maybe 1/5 of our discussions are about our business. The others are about our families or what's going on. And so it's not like we were a band that was put together by someone else. No, we've been together ever since, I had hair that wasn't just all gray. So I mean, been around for a minute. So I think it's great about having relationships, and that's what's pretty much built our business, I would say.
And Scott, what are your thoughts?
I think one of the greatest things, and everybody tied it in the pen, but I think that just the experience of being around so many people that were so intellectually gifted in their respective way, and for it to become normalized only after the fact. You talk about looking back, Dave, but only looking back and realizing that, wow, everybody that you encountered was intellectually gifted. You might not think so because you're dealing in some different social aspect of it, but the reality is everybody was intellectually gifted to get them to the university. And a lot of times people will say, well, what differentiates Penn from, attending another university? I mean, we had our share of, things that we went through during our time at Penn, but I think that was also a microcosm of what was happening, in the country. So it was good for us to experience it. So I don't look at it as saying, well, Penn had this, but no one else. I'm like, that's great. Some of the relationships that I had obviously have lasted throughout the decades. And just, one of the things that when we talk about solution-based selling and interacting with our clients, being comfortable in that space, I think that's what created the Penn Experience, and it instilled confidence to make us comfortable in any space. So when we're talking to someone, if they're C-level, if they're whatever, we meet them where they are. You don't have to be C-level. If you're C-level, we have a conversation, meet you where you are. If you're not, we meet you where you are. But there's no difference in the level of service that we provide. But there is a difference in how we treat you, because everyone is different. It doesn't mean someone gets treated better or worse. It means everyone gets treated as an individual. And I think that those are the things that we've just learned. And like I said, it's a combination of great Penn experience, great upbringing, having the fortune to have great mentors. Kev mentioned Mr. Haskins. Hask was, everybody has it and says, where would I be without him? But holy cow, Hask, Professor Shropshire, Ken Shropshire, same thing. He started when we started. Mm-hmm. That was the irony of it all. It was his first class. Yes, his first class was our first class. So that was the funny thing. And we used to joke about that. It's like, well, we made it and somehow you did too. You didn't decide to go to another university after dealing with us. But, it was one of those things of just having those influences and feeling okay. We kind of, and oddly enough, some of the upperclassmen, which seems amazing at 18, some of the guys, the people that we encountered that were just a few years older than us, but just seemed like they were just, it was just eons as far as their maturity and their focus. Mm-hmm. And that really just helped. It helped, at that point and even to this day. So it was just incredible experience.
Well, I'll end by saying this, that the upperclassmen, well, let me dial back a bit, that when I'm interacting with other Penn alums, what I'm trying to get them to see is what you just described. is what you just described. So it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you guys on, because I knew that I was going to get that during the interview, right? And there's no way that I can actually convey to people that were not there during the time that we were there, the kind of energy, I call it, there was an energy that was an amazing energy, even in the bad times, as you were just discussing, right? And even when things were not going well, the energy was still there, right? So in my interaction with the Penn administration for going on 22 years now, this is what I've been talking about since we first started volunteering. So I at least want to thank you all. Thank you for making time for me.
Thank you. Yeah.
And yeah, it's a 6-hour difference, at least from the East Coast. So, you know, we're heading into 8 o'clock now, and I want to make sure that I honor this other meeting that I have. So I want to again thank you, Max, thank you, Kevin, thank you, Scott. And you know what I'll try to do is make this video available as soon as possible. After the meeting I have next is going to go on for an hour, but then after that I'll do my damnedest to get this online so that we can see how, you know, our colleagues will react to seeing us four together and having this conversation, because it is in my eyes, is a big deal. It's a big deal. I mean, we might be the first, let's put it this way. We didn't come up in this virtual world, but we understand it because we experienced the internet as well, right? It was important, and it became more and more important as we sort of came through and we started to get professional. But you know, the people that really do this internet thing are much younger than us.
That's right.
Right, they're much younger. We understand it, but it's not something we do every day.
That's right.
Right. So you know, again, thank you, and have a great day, rest of your day, rest of your evening, and we'll speak again soon, right?
Likewise. I appreciate it, Dave.
Appreciate
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much.
All right.
Take care.
Take care of yourselves.
Yeah.